Are you looking for an athletic scholarship? You're in the right place. This is the Recruit Me Athletic Scholarship Podcast, the longest-running podcast on recruiting and athletic scholarships. We're here to help your family navigate the recruiting road all the way to an athletic scholarship. He's a recruiting expert and a dad of a D1 athlete and a high school athlete pursuing a scholarship. With a wealth of experience to share, here's Recruit Me CEO, Brent Hanks.
Welcome to episode 233 of the Athletic Scholarship Podcast. This week is part two of an interview with Paul Putt. Paul is the parent of 4 athletes. I invite you to listen to part 1, episode 232, to get the whole family's background. Also in episode 232, we discussed how the Putt family learned from their first 2 daughters' recruitments. Paul reflects on some advice from a coach, gives camp advice, how important a student-athlete's commitment is, and how video made a difference, and more. In this episode, we cover more recruiting advice on making a school list, how a student-athlete needs to learn to talk to coaches, academic importance, and how entering your freshman year of college strong and mentally ready makes a huge difference. So let's get into the interview. Paul took time out of his busy schedule, and we did the interview in his new training facility. The audio has a little echo in it, and you may hear a dog that was trying to get into the conversation. But the info in this interview is really worth hearing. What are a couple pieces of advice that you would give to a high school student and their family to prepare for their recruitment for college?
Have the honest conversation. What do you really love the sport? If you really love it, then let's move on. If you don't really love it, then the chances of you putting the hard work in to stay at the next level, because coaches are going to have a lot more expectations of you. NAIA will have expectations. Division II will have expectations. Division I will have a lot more expectations. They will control a lot of what you do and how you do it, good and bad, whether you like it or not, depending on your coach and also your program as well. Second thing is start looking at videos. Get a video together so you can ship it off. Coaches are all about videos. They can watch them on their phone. They can watch them on their iPads. They can watch them on their computer. They can do it while they're on the road recruiting or at their office or in their house. That's a big deal. Make sure it's good video at that. The third thing is have your list of schools. What we've seen in the past is that kids don't typically go further than 4 hours past home. It's pretty rare. That they stay. Most kids that go further than 4 hours away from the Midwest usually come back home, and that's just the Midwest. Maybe everybody else is a little different. Have your list of schools, get prepared, start emailing, start peppering those coaches, say, hey, I'm interested in your school, and shoot the video to them and tell them who your coaches are. You also got to tell them on your emails what year your graduation is. If you don't do that, they don't email you back, okay? And there's so many different rules. So like right now, Division I, they're kind of locked down on what they can do. They're not getting a call and talk to you and stuff. Where Division II and NAIA are still getting to do all that stuff. And I don't understand the rules, and I don't think the coaches do either. So nobody really gets it. But COVID's changed a lot of that stuff as well. So you're going to have the video. You're going to identify your schools. You're going to identify whether or not you really want to put the hard work into going. And then you got all that information. You got a game plan. You can start peppering all these different schools and let them know that you're interested, and go from there.
So Mariah is a junior in high school, and she's gone from playing both volleyball and basketball to just basketball and concentrating on it. What are you doing with her that maybe you didn't get to do with Michaela or Macy?
Well, the one thing we started doing after Michaela and along with Macy was they have to own it. I can tell you right now, straight up, coaches will tell you this. I had a coach tell me this one time, and now understand the coaches were asking me questions as well. I like you, but I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to your daughter. And I'm like, fair enough, good luck. So, because my daughter's quiet. So to me, that was interesting to watch. And she came out of her shell, and she actually started having these conversations with coaches. And the coaches a lot of times will dig up information on you. They will, if they're smart, they will find out a little bit more about your personality. So for Macy, one of our recruiting trips, the coach that was recruiting her, I was talking to her, we were in her office, she goes, during our conversation, you have to interrupt me one time and ask me a question about my program. And I was like, oh, wow, this is gonna be fun for me. And she did. Macy did. She asked her a good, solid question, and that coach was like, great question. And they moved on from there. And because the relationship is going to be with the kids. Once you get to college and you're not doing club and high school stuff anymore, the coaches don't have a relationship with the parents anymore. I mean, it's about your kid, and they have to have that relationship, a good one or a bad one, depending on how it goes, with your child. And so hopefully you have your kids kind of prepared to communicate with other adults to speak their mind, to stand up for things that they believe in, but at the same time, be coachable and approachable and be willing to make some changes. So with Mariah, we're trying to get her to identify those schools right now. I'm not worried about her talent. I want to know that she wants to go play. I want to know what schools she may be interested in. And now I want you to identify those schools, and now I want you to start peppering them with emails. And then also at the same time, send your video. Because she's had some requests. She has talked to a couple of schools already, and she's got the chance to talk to a Division I school. She's got a chance to talk to a couple of really good D2 schools. First thing they want to know is, do you have a video? That's like almost the first thing. And the other thing we haven't even really talked about was the grades. Academics is the big deal.
Yep.
You know, with your son going to a school that's a very high-end academic school, most schools are that way because coaches don't want to, if it comes down between two kids and one kid is a very good student and the other one is not, coaches like to take their chances on the good student.
Yeah.
Because there are some academic standards those schools have to stand by and abide by. And if you are bringing a bunch of athletes in that don't do that, it just looks bad for the school and it looks bad for your program. And so your grades are really big. And I would say grades are even a bigger deal for the girls a lot of times at the Division II level, because Division II, they can split scholarships up.
Right.
And so if a coach can come in and give you X amount of money for athletic scholarship because they know you're getting X amount of money for academics, your full ride is going to be pieced together.
Right.
But if it's a full ride, it's great, no matter what. So identifying those schools and starting to pepper those schools with emails is what she's been doing the last month or so.
Is there any leftover piece of advice you want to give our Recruit Me families that we maybe have missed?
Yeah, I think your clubs are important. If your high school coaches aren't sending your information off to colleges for you, then your clubs are. The club that Mariah's playing for right now is Phenom out of the Columbia area, and they do an awesome job with the kids. They are killing Twitter. Yeah. And I don't care who the girls are. There's girls from Nixon that Mariah plays with. There's girls up in Columbia. There's girls all over the state. And those girls, they get the information about those girls and they kill Twitter with that information. And they send it. And what they're doing is they're sending it to all those coaches that they have relationships with. And so those coaches and they'll tell you, we send this stuff off. We put it on Twitter at 9 o'clock at night because we know those coaches are looking at 9 o'clock the next morning. And it hits their Twitter page right there. And they see that little clip and they see that your stats were good. And they see that you pulled down 12 boards, and they know that you got 3 steals and that you didn't have any turnovers but had 20 points last night. Okay, hey, tell me about your kid that's playing for you. They do a great job of that kind of stuff. And that's important because, club has kind of taken over stuff, and college coaches come to a club event because they can see 100 kids at one time. You can go to a basketball arena and there may be 5 courts going, 2 teams on each court. You got 10 teams. You got 150 kids right there on all those courts, and they can watch them, and they can move from court to court. They can't do that at the high school level, and that's a lot of film to watch. Yeah. Now, they may come in and identify 2 or 3 girls that they're coming to watch anyway, and that's been the sad thing about COVID. So the 2 or 3 girls that they come to watch at a tournament, every now and then they get to see that special little nugget that they hadn't heard about. That golden nugget that is a diamond in the rough, and they go, hey, who's that girl? Or who's that boy? And COVID this year's kind of hurt that a little bit because they were kind of kept off campus at a lot of the tournaments. A lot of the coaches weren't allowed to come. So supposedly they were watching on their computers, but how that works. So, having good club coaches that are good club programs are going to send your information out that believe in you because, see, they want you to be good in their club because when you're good in their club, then it makes their club look better too. So,
like when you go to these camps and stuff, do you send information ahead of time too to kind of let them know that you're going to be at those prospect camps or ID type of camps?
Yes and no. With Michaela, we did do that. Macy, we did a little bit because you have to register. Yeah. So they have a registry up already. So with that registry, all those coaches get all the information with all the kids coming in. It usually is their height and their positions and schools they go to, club they're in, stuff like that. So they kind of get that already. We did 1 or 2 camps last year with Mariah, and this is where your club coaches come in. The one camp was closed already. Registration was over. We didn't know it was going to fit in our schedule until the last minute, and then it did. Call the club coaches and, hey, we really want to go to that one. Give me a little bit of time. Let's see what we do. An hour later, they call us back, say you're in. They got your number down. They've got your information. Show up with $100, whatever you owe them for the camp, and they're ready for you. For that instance, last year for Mariah, when she left that camp, they talked to her. They said, when you get home, please send us your video. We want to see your video of some of your highlights from last year and stuff like that. So that turned out good for us. So
we'll get talking about Merrick here in a couple of years, won't we?
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully.
So he's growing up, so he's having some big shoes to fill.
Yeah, we're learning the boy thing is a lot different than the girl thing. So it's a learning process all over.
And your girls got recruited fairly early because they were always mature. Mm-hmm. You may see a little bit difference with Merrick, even though he's a big, tall kid, but boys tend to be just a little bit later.
They seem to be. Of course, working in my world in strength conditioning, I see that with boys. You see the ones who are bigger and stronger and faster at 12. Well, by 16, everybody's caught up to them. They don't stand out like they used to. And with the girls, they may start developing early and be standing out at an early age, and they may continue to stand out. But eventually, other girls catch up to them too. Maybe not quite as fast. Yeah. Or quite as much, but people do that, and that's where the work ethic comes in. You got to make sure you keep working at it, because eventually you're going to find kids that are just as fast, hit the ball just as hard, work just as hard as you do, and you got to kind of keep that up to a certain degree. And I know one thing you and I didn't talk about, and this isn't just my own kids, but working with other kids have gone on and played at different levels of sports, NAIA up to Division I. For my daughter at Division I level, and one of the soccer girls that I worked with that's at Division I school, the one thing that stood out for them when they stepped on campus that first summer, because for Division I soccer and Division I volleyball, they go to school in July. And so when they get there, the coaches still can't touch them, but the strength coach can. And so one conversation I have with the parents is, let's get in the weight room, let's get it going, let's get strong, let's get conditioned, because that first day on campus, when you're in the weight room, you're still an 18-year-old girl, or in my daughter's case, you're 18 years old, and you've got girls on the team that are 22 years old. And my girl that went off to soccer that worked with me, here she was a little bitty, and she goes into the college program, and out of 10 freshmen that show up on that first day, she's the only one that had a weightlifting background. So her and my daughter both in different schools and different programs at different years, they earned the respect of all the other girls right off the bat, because the other girls saw, dang, they're strong, they're stout. And the coaches said, okay, you guys know what you're doing, so now we don't have to waste all this time trying to teach you all these things. Now we can take you where you are and just keep moving on. And that was a big plus. The feedback from my young lady who went off to play soccer was, she worked out with me 6 o'clock in the morning on Tuesdays and Thursdays all through high school her senior year, even during soccer season.
And we've talked about Parker, whenever he went in his freshman year, he went in the summer, got into the weight room with the trainers, and then had a really good fall, and that parlayed into getting some good innings his freshman year. And I know the Easley girl is who you're talking about. We had her dad on our podcast. And so, yes, you've had some success with both your daughter and the Easley girl, and being ready and being prepared when they set foot on campus that very first time is very, very important.
Because the strength coaches they're so imperative at the Division I level, because they get a hold of the kids when the other coaches can't. Mm-hmm. So they get to do things with them during those times where because you're limited. In Division I, you get limited a lot. Right. And so they're really relying on that strength coach to help reduce the injuries, to help get them stronger, more powerful, to jump higher, to be faster. And so it's imperative that they do that. And at the high school level, some of the programs kids come out of, and they're not prepared. They get to that college level, girls they're strong. I mean, they're really strong. And I remember watching Jaden in a highlight film last year playing soccer, and she was running down the field. If anybody's ever seen her play and how fast she is, and this other girl from their team was bigger than her and was staying with her all the way down. Well, soccer gets pretty physical. So here they are bumping each other with their shoulders all the way down and fighting for the ball. And I remember texting her after that, saying, I saw your video. You remember all those shoulder exercises we did? There you go. Yeah. And that's why. And just to make fun of her a little bit on that. But that was true. That's why we did that, because they are so physical, and they do get to push off a lot with their shoulders. And so we were trying to get prepared for all that stuff. And so it's imperative. You get to make a great first impression, or you don't get to make a great first impression right off the bat. And you don't get that back.
And one of the advantages of going to a 4-year school and a bigger school is you get a lot of perks, but some other disadvantages is you're playing against, like you said, 22, 23-year-old men or women, and if you don't come prepared that first year, that freshman sophomore year, you're sitting the bench, and we've been lucky, I think, with our kids and Jaden, as we talked to her, because she did a great job at Mizzou. They came in prepared, and we've been kind of spoiled with our kids getting to play early.
Absolutely.
And but we do talk in the Recruit Me a lot about are you prepared to sit?
Yeah.
And if mentally you're not prepared to sit your freshman and
That's
sophomore year,
hard.
that may not be a place that you need to go.
And that's tough. That's another discussion we had with Macy going off to Division I school was, are you ready to sit down? Because it's going to be really hard for you. Because she went in with 5 other freshmen. One of the freshmen played quite a bit. Another one got to play a pretty good amount. Her best friend and roommate played a little bit less than the other girl. And then our setter that she went in with, that they were recruiting before Macy, she hardly got to play at all. And a lot of that had to do with, not because she didn't do a good job, it's because of the offense that they ran on the volleyball court, and they kept one setter on the court at all times. So, we had that conversation. Are you ready? Because you've never sat and watched before. Yeah. And that's college for you a lot of times. And for her, she didn't have to. She worked her way up. She showed she had talent and did that, and she fit into the scheme of their rotation. But we were trying to get in her head and just get her ready and prepared, because it's hard. It's deflating. It's upsetting. Because everybody comes from a high school or from a club season where they're all the studs. They're good. And, Macy was a 3-time All-State in Ozark, but guess what? All the other girls on her team were not only All-State, but some of them were MVPs of their whole state. You're coming in with everybody else who's good. Now what are you going to do?
Yep.
So those are conversations you have to have. There was a coach from one of our ID camps we went to that made a good point. He sat down and talked to all the parents. He said, identify the schools you want to go to, be honest about what level you can play at, and then if you get to go to that school, when you choose a school, are you okay with not playing? Are you just wanting to go to that school because that's the school you want to go to, and are you okay with not playing? Or do you need to be the one that plays all the time? Because if you're the one that needs to play all the time, then you may need to go to a different school. He goes, and that's okay. And he was telling us a story about himself. He played on a team, a men's volleyball program at a college, and they won the national title once or twice. And he says, I never played a lick, not one time. He goes, but my job was, I was the setter for the other team. So I would watch film on the other setter, and I would mimic every movement he did to try to prepare our starters to play and to win. He goes, you know what? I never played, and I don't regret it, because I got to be on a national championship team, and I know that my role was to prepare the starters to play the team that I was playing the role of. Yep. And he goes, I did my job. He goes, and I was okay with that. He goes, but not everybody is.
Right.
And I was like, that's a good point.
And I've said both are the right decisions if you can accept it. So you can be a star at a smaller school, or you can go win a national championship someplace
and not be the star.
Be the star.
And so it's just a lot of conversations you have, because I think, like most parents, unfortunately, if you're like my wife and I, you don't really know what's in your kid's head a lot of times. And trying to pull that out of them, because
I don't think they know.
Yeah, they don't know either, and they're still trying to figure that out too. And you're trying to get this information, so that requires sitting down and getting away from your phone and actually thinking about what you really want to do and where you want to go. That's hard sometimes for them.
Appreciate all the information, and really a lot of the things that you said reinforce a lot of the things that Recruit Me talks about. I think you learned as you went, just like we did in our process, and we appreciate you sharing that information with our Recruit Me families.
I think the one last thing I'd add was just, if you have questions, ask people who have been there and done that. That's one of the biggest learning things you can do right there. Just ask people who have been there and done that already.
Yep, that's great advice, and that's stuff that we didn't do very well when we first started this. So, well, Paul, thank you very much.
You bet.
I want to thank Paul for sharing about his family's recruitment experience, and also want to thank you for listening, and make sure you subscribe to the Athletic Scholarship Podcast so you can listen to a new episode every Tuesday, and also go back and listen to past episodes. The last 10 episodes of 2020 had the 10 myths about athletic scholarships from the Recruit Me 3.0 athletic scholarship system. So to start 2021, I'm going to dip into Appendix C of the Recruit Me 3.0 system for frequently asked recruiting questions from student athletes and parents. I hope you find this Q&A section helpful. Question: My son did not receive a baseball scholarship, but wants to continue to play in college. Is it worth it, or is it only the scholarship kids that get to play? Answer: Your son can definitely continue to play baseball even if he does not receive a scholarship. The coach may not see his talent until he gets there and tries out for the team. So much can happen during the course of a year. Players come and go. Some do poorly while others bloom at some point during the year. If he makes the team, tell him to hang in there. Playing on a college level is a lot different, and he will have to determine how far he wants to go and how long he wants to play. Thank you for listening, and join us next week on the Athletic Scholarship Podcast.